Whoa, time for guest hosts. Whoa, it's time for guest hosts. Whoa, love the guest hosts. I just want a guest host. It's episode 2 of Guest Host Raw, the show where I review the guest host era of Monday Night Raw. Thanks so much if you are tuning in from the last episode. Thanks so much for the feedback we got from 2 weeks ago when we dropped the first edition with Batista being the inaugural guest host. And so we're going to follow up with the next week with July 6th, 2009, once again at the HP Pavilion in San Jose, California. So this was the second half of a 2-show taping in San Jose, and boy, you can tell this one is taped because throughout the evening you can definitely tell when, commentary's got to go back into the studio at Stanford to revoice some commentary. Even the opening dialogue on this show, when the host Ted DiBiase makes his appearance here, and the crowd sweetening is very blatant. Whoever's working the booing and cheering sound effects, not very good with mixing it, and you can tell when they hit it too. So that was definitely a jarring experience for sure. So as I mentioned, this week's guest host is the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. For the second week in a row, we have another wrestler in that position, but instead of it being an active, albeit injured wrestler, we have a retired wrestler, somebody who does have experience, being a mouthpiece, whether he was a manager or a commentator or an authority figure in the WXO, of course. But, DiBiase is here. He's got the $1 Million Championship. He's coming out with his son, Ted DiBiase Jr., and Cody Rhodes, 2/3 of Legacy. It's still weird to see Cody with no knee pads. The trunked no knee pads look Cody. That's this weird one for me. So he opens up by saying, as Vince McMahon and Donald Trump have proven in the last 2 weeks, everybody has a price. And, he says, well, I heard that Raw had this guest host thing opening up where all I had to do was write a check and have this unlimited power on Raw. How could I refuse? And so he's using this, he says he's using this platform to help, showcase the future of the business. And he does this really good job kind of putting over Ted and Cody. Oh, there's these fine, amazing young athletes. These are the future of the business and everything. He'd end up being half right. Then he gets right down to business. And he says, I understand that champions will not be defending their titles until Night of Champions, but I can still have some fun. So I'm going to take the unified tag champions, Edge and Chris Jericho, someone pushes the boo button very blatantly at that point, will be fighting and losing the belts to Cody Rhodes and Ted DiBiase. So wait a minute. So he doesn't have the power to undo the whole no title defenses until the pay-per-view thing, but he has the power to make a match for a pay-per-view that he has no power over. It only took 2 episodes and literally the same taping, but they've already blown up the whole unlimited power thing they were putting over so hard on episode 1 of this. So then harkening back to last week when, Randy Orton was in the 3-on-1 gauntlet match, Ted, the elder, asks Cody, what did you think about what Mark Henry did in that gauntlet match? Did you think that was right? And Cody goes, no, I think that was terrible what Mark Henry did. He should be punished for what he did to Randy Orton. And so DiBiase goes, great, we're going to put Mark Henry in a match with Cody Rhodes. And so there's a bit of a shock there. And then he talks kind of one-on-one with his son, Ted Jr., and he says, I know you told Randy Orton off at the bash, and I know you guys made up afterward, but I also know that I saw a look in your eye, a look that acknowledged, what everyone here knows, that Randy Orton is just holding you down, and he knows that you're more talented and a more gifted athlete than he is, and Randy is just using you. And so he says tonight, it won't be for the championship, but I am going to put you in a one-on-one match with Randy Orton, and not only are you going to wrestle him, you're going to beat him. Then he laughs, then his music laughs, and then we move on. But I thought that was a very interesting opening shot. I like that, it's continuing that for the second week in a row, the guest hosts have specifically been messing just with Legacy, and Batista, his was definitely more targeted toward the whole group, toward Orton. With DiBiase, we don't really know what the motivations are. Like, he seems to be wanting to be supportive of his son. We'll find out a little bit more about his justification for the Mark Henry match, but it's it's very interesting that we have a bit more of a nuanced, kind of double-sided, where's this guy coming from angle with DiBiase. Then after the opening spiel, Edge's music plays, and he and Chris Jericho make their way out, and they have a bit of a stare down with DiBiase and Rhodes as they get ready for the first match of the evening. It's Edge and Jericho taking on the Colognes. This is a rematch from the previous week, which means that these two teams wrestled twice in one night. And the whole thing with this was, it was the final rematch with the teams. Wasn't for the titles, though. They said that this is a match that will, show that they are just as good as Edge and Jericho, which doesn't mean anything. And okay, yeah, they're definitely losing here. It's a pretty short match. I think they get less time here than they did the previous week, and that match was even kind of cut short by a commercial break that covered the first part of it. So this is a bit of a shorter match. Carlito is taking a lot of the heat for this one, and he makes the hot tag to Primo. Carlito's knocked to the outside. He wants to storm back in, but the referee's kind of distracting him. That allows Jericho, who's not the legal man, to hit the code breaker on Primo, Edge with a spear, and so pretty over and done quickly. The champions win this non-title match. Then after the bell, Carlito has had it. I forget how long this breakup had been simmering, but I would hope it was more than just what we saw the week before with the accidental contact, Primo getting pushed into the ropes or whatever, because Carlito snaps, beats the bejesus out of Primo for a good long time and throws him over the announce table. So the Colognes are officially done here. And, like I said, the match was far less dramatic and exciting than the last week's, but I think the split from the Colognes was very intriguing. I think babyface Carlito is okay, but I think heel Carlito is better. I always liked him more as a heel, so I am curious to see how a newly re-heeled Carlito will do. I think at this time, I think it was around this time there were reports of like, oh, Carlito, he has this negative reputation of being, lazy or whatever. And so I wonder if this is, we're going to see if a new coat of paint or reapplying an older coat of paint for Carlito will help kind of boost things for him. We see backstage in the Legacy headquarters, there's Ted and Cody chatting, and they're just kind of complaining about their respective situations. The champion, Randy Orton, walks in and is also not pleased with the news of these matches. He says, this is not good. We don't need to have me beating you in front of everybody. That's not going to help our cause, not going to help our goals. And DiBiase takes offense to that. And he says, wait a minute, I could beat you. He all of a sudden has this kind of fire lit under him. And then he goes on to say basically his dad could beat up your dad, and he says, not only am I going to wrestle you tonight, I'm going to win. I'm going to beat you. And that was good. They definitely been teasing the DiBiase breakaway from Orton for a while at this point. And I do remember fans, being excited about this. Like, hey, DiBiase in 2009 definitely seemed like the hotter hand or the one with more upside between he and Cody, And so I think people were wanting to see that breakaway. And so we're kind of seeing that maybe accelerating here. We get a breakdown of the 15-person trade that took place across all three brands this past week, 5 wrestlers per show, and they show who's coming to Raw. And we saw a few of these last week in the Gauntlet match, but they just kind of break them down again. He says, they bring up Evan Bourne, and I love Jerry Lawler's line where he says, who knows if he'll crash and fall on Monday nights or fly off to new universes. Like, oh man, who wrote that? New universes. I'd love to see a show with Space Ranger Space Ranger Evan Bourne flying off to new universes. Then they have Gail Kim, who Michael Cole describes as the perfect combination of sex appeal and athleticism. Not to Vince McMahon, apparently, according to legend, since he didn't understand that apparently people could be attracted to Asian women. And then they remind you of Jack Swagger and Mark Henry. And then the 5th person is Alicia Fox, who they say is, quote, guaranteed to heat up Monday nights. And our next match is a bit of a showcase of the 2 new lady trades. You've got Gail Kim teaming up with Mickie James to take on Alicia Fox and the Divas champion Maryse. And of course, we saw last week Mickie won that fatal 4-way match to become the new #1 contender. She's facing Maryse at Night of Champions, so continuing the build for that. Alicia gets some time in the ring after Maryse, and then she gets beat up by Mickie. Gail's all over the place when she gets tagged in. She's flying around. She hits, I guess you could call it an early version of the Heat Seeker on Alicia at one point. She gets worked over for a minute, but then she hits Eat the Feet, which they didn't call it that yet, but she hits the move on Maryse to win. Like, wow, she just beat the champion clean, which is interesting considering Mickie James is the #1 contender, not her. So I'm wondering, are they going to build that into the build for Night of Champions? Are they going to turn it into a triple threat? I'm reminded now as I'm watching this, like, oh yeah, this is the era where champions just lose on TV all the time. for no real reason, and it never goes anywhere. And this is not the only time we are going to see that happening on this show, where a champion just eats a completely needless loss. Back in the $1 Million Man's dressing room, we see Papa Ted getting his nails done. Cody Rhodes walks in, and Ted asks, "Hey, do you want your nails done?" And Cody says, "No thanks." "Ah, you are resisting your dashing ways, Mr. Rhodes." But anyway, Cody gives Ted this wad of cash, and Ted says, "It's not enough, but I know what you're doing. You want out of this match with Mark Henry." And he's trying to remind him of who you are. So you're the son of the American Dream, aren't you? And son of a plumber, or the grandson of a plumber. And Cody goes, "Yeah, my father's Dusty Rhodes," a line he would go on to say for many more years after that. But yeah, my father's Dusty Rhodes. And Ted goes, "And I hate Dusty Rhodes." And we're getting a little slice of the old evil, mean heel Ted DiBiase. I like this because he's going at, "I hate Dusty Rhodes, that fat, bloated, gyrating fool," like, oh, going back to the SummerSlam days. Why would I ever associate with a common man? And so basically this is him punishing Cody for the sins of the father against Mark Henry. And he says, "And if you don't wrestle this match, I'll put you in polka dots like they put your old man." I'm like, okay, so they're just saying the quiet part loud now. That was a punishment. So we go to that next match now as Cody Rhodes takes on Mark Henry, who we saw return to Raw last week in the Gauntlet match. And so Cody's trying to outmaneuver Mark early on, trying to stick and move. He goes for a dive, but Henry catches him, hits the world's strongest slam, and I apologize for calling it the world's largest slam last time here on the show. I don't know what came over me. But anyway, Cody bails after the move, and he gets counted out. And that was it. So not much of a match, but it's a great look for Mark Henry. He's 2-0 now against members of Legacy, one of whom is the champion. And so I think it's great momentum for him. And it's always great when the fans are behind it. The fans want to see, Henry be the next guy to topple Legacy at some point, or they're definitely happy he's there beating them up at least. We get the "Don't Try This at Home" PSA, and then it's time for Randy Orton versus Ted DiBiase, Legacy members doing battle here. And they bring up the recent history between Orton and DiBiase, I should say, because late last year, Orton punted DiBiase, and I think that they're trying to explain that as some sort of an initiation or tough love thing. And then, of course, we saw they bring up what happened at the Bash the previous weekend, where DiBiase started standing up to Orton and saying, "We're not your lackeys, we're not your stooges," sort of thing. And so, like I said, it seems like they're building toward a big thing, or at least testing the waters for it at this point. They lock up, and after a little bit of jaw-jacking, Orton just shouts, "Why? Why? Why are you doing this?" And then DiBiase thinks about it, he decks him, and he throws some arm drags, and the fans, they popped okay for it. I think that first big shot on Orton should have got a huger reaction than it ultimately did. It's like, oh, yay, good for you. So we come back from break, and Orton is fully in control, chin locks aplenty. He does the Garvin stomps, but DiBiase's got it scouted, starts to come back with some quick covers. The fans are getting more invested into this, but Orton just wipes him out with a forearm. That shot looked brutal. Orton with a small punt to Ted as he's kind of draped over the rope. So kind of a front punt, but I'm like, man, it really makes you wonder why Orton wouldn't just do his big devastating punt way more often if it were that easy. Orton hits the draping DDT, but Ted's showing a lot of resilience. At one point, he comes off like a diving clothesline. He even escapes an RKO attempt with a surprise pinfall, and then you've got a power slam and everything. The fans are definitely on Ted's side here, and they really feel he's got something. Dream Street is attempted. Orton, throws Ted off, hits the RKO to win 1-2-3, and so Orton has survived this challenge, and he's taught Ted a lesson, but as he's walking away with the belt, he looks back, gives a little nod, gives a little bit of that speck. I liked that. And, it seemed like it felt like it was a good match, but I also felt like they were holding back a little, like they were maybe setting something up for something even bigger, right? That's what we're building toward with this, right? Where's my DiBiase posse? Backstage, Triple H is interviewed by Josh Matthews, and Josh asks, hey, with your one-on-one match with John Cena being for a chance to fight Orton at Night of Champions, how does this change things? And so Triple H goes, you want to talk epic? Nothing's more epic than John Cena versus myself. And then you throw Randy Orton in the mix, your chances drastic go down. Okay, he didn't really say that part, but that's kind of what I was reminded of when he started saying that. And he says he'll go through anyone to get what he wants. even John Cena. Like, well, yeah, you guys aren't friends. Then after the break, it's time for the Babyface VIP Lounge, where big things are popping and little things are stopping, and MVP says, this VIP Lounge is for me and all of you. Oh, that was really quite nice of him. I also like the candles that were laid out on that coffee table, all unlit and shit. Now, it's kind of a not a great looking VIP lounge if you ask me. Anyway, MVP mentions the $1 Million Man, but how about like the super duper billionaire Donald Trump and that trade he orchestrated, guys? And Trump gets a mixed reaction, and so then he introduces one of those new draftees, and it's Jack Swagger. So Montel asks Jack, what was it like to debut as a Raw superstar? And Jack starts to talk, and MVP cuts him off and says, I know you're just drooling to get an answer out, Jack, because yeah, we got to make fun of his lisp on fucking day one of being on Raw. Great way to build him up. And so he reiterates the question, what was it like to, not fight Orton? What kind of All-American does that, essentially? And so Jack throwing some shade back at MVP, saying, I went to Oklahoma and you went to Florida State Penitentiary, that is. And so he's making fun of MVP's prison record, and he says, meanwhile, I've never even got so much as a parking ticket. Like, ooh, man, future Jack Swagger is going to eat those words later on for sure. And Swagger says, you may be the MVP of the prison basketball league, but I am the real MVP of Raw. And like, I feel that when MVP turned face, that just kind of gave the writers carte blanche. Like, okay, everyone just dunks on you for your prison record as like their heat on you. It's so fucking unoriginal. But anyway, MVP, he brings up his past. He says, you know what, I made bad decisions, but I served my time, I paid my debt to society, and now I go to schools and I tell kids not to follow my footsteps, And there's a difference between you and me. He starts taking off his shirt and his chains, and Swagger's just standing there like an idiot going, oh, what are you doing? What are you doing? And so MVP gets in his face and wants to fight him, and Jack is backtracking, that is. He walks away and he says, I don't fight criminals. Oh, what a classist pig he is. And so the MVP says, well, since you've been on Raw, you don't seem to fight at all. And then he fires off his ballin' catchphrase, and that's that. Again, I think it was fine. Like, they could have done a better job, like, building up Jack Swagger as a heel to actually, not and be intimidating. Have him beat up MVP or something. Have him tear up the VIP lounge. Don't go with this trite, oh, you were a criminal stuff that I felt really was the linchpin to a lot of MVP babyface feuds during this time. Backstage, Papa Ted is consoling Child Ted about his loss to Orton earlier, saying, hey, you still did a good job. But Ted Jr. is very upset at his old man. He says, you set me up to fail. This is all about you and your ego and you wanting to steal the spotlight again. And then when Ted Sr. starts to talk, Ted Jr. slaps him in the face and walks off. And that was an interesting, I felt like we missed a step in that. Ted's all over the place, because at one point he's like, yeah, I'm going to fight Orton, I'm going to beat him. And then he gets beat, and suddenly now he just realizes, oh, my dad screwed me over. He was trying to fuck on me. But I don't know. I think that what you could have had was a scene where maybe Ted Jr. listened in on DiBiase kind of roasting Cody and explaining why he put him in the match with Henry, or if Cody told him or kind of relayed that info so Ted could realize that. And this did not feel like a babyface move. He's just assimilating right back into heel mode. And so whatever they were trying to do, trying to build DiBiase up maybe as a potential usurper of Orton's power, they immediately yanked that back. The show recapped last week's Raw, where Kofi Kingston and The Big Show fought to a double countout, and Show would have gotten a U.S. title shot against Kofi had he won. But this week, it's all about a couple of really fast-paced, high-octane wrestlers in Kingston fighting the newcomer Evan Bourne in a non-title match. And so, yeah, the first minute or so, or maybe 30 seconds of offense is quick sequence, and then they slow it right on down for a long old time in this matchup. He runs into the corner again. Bourne lifts the knee, lays Kofi out, hits that beautiful shooting star press, and pins and beats the U.S. champion. Wow, we sure like having our champions just fucking lose all the time, don't we? But, well, it's the Big Show. Show comes out. He's an angry giant. He beats the piss out of both guys. Big Show has to take a knee to hit Evan Bourne with a spear. I'm like, why did you do that? Of all the moves you could hit Evan Bourne with. You hitting a spear, I think, is the least impactful. Just look like he fell. He just fell into him. And then he punches Kofi a couple of times in the body, and then he puts him in the camel clutch for a little bit. So he's laying out both guys. But I'm like, if you were really upset, you should have beat Evan Bourne up more, because he did what you could not do, and that was decisively beat the United States champion, and you're a 500-pound man. After the break, Josh Matthews is with John Cena, and Cena talks about the main event for tonight, and he says, tonight, Raw is being transformed into WrestleMania, which is a fuckload of hyperbole if I ever heard that, with two of the all-time best are colliding in the main event. And Josh asks, well, what do you think Triple H meant when he said all bets were off with this matchup? And Cena goes, well, he probably meant that two of the all-time best are going to lock horns, and that whoever comes out on top is going to have a shot at the diamonds and gold. Yes, that is sure what it meant. And that was pretty much, and then he wraps it up by saying, some familiar words going to come back. The champ is here. Haven't said him in a while. Yeah, that was a weird promo. That was not one of Cena's better ones, and that felt like all improv instead of like scripted. It was like, this could have been a better written promo. Main event time, it's the Night of Champions Tournament Finals, John Cena versus Triple H, and the winner takes on Randy Orton for the WWE title at Night of Champions. And boy, in case you didn't hear, folks, this match is like a WrestleMania main event. Like, we get it, yes. We know they wrestled at 22, and they're here wrestling again on TV. Wow, glory be. So anyway, I love the fact they get this face-off moment when the bell rings, and they kind of want to do like the Rock Hogan thing where they face off and they get the reactions or whatever, because Triple H does this look out like this, gets no reaction. Cena looks out, gets mild boos. So yeah, I'm sure whatever you guys were going for, that's what happened. So there's more of that slow stuff at the beginning, kind of more exchanging of cookie recipes before the action really picks up, and it does, From there it goes boom, boom, boom. There's like attempt. They're fighting on the outside. Cena is thrown into the ring post, and when we come back from break, it's all H-Man. He is just definitely dominating Cena for the longest time with that slow, methodical pace. Cena starts to make his comeback, hits his moves of doom. Triple H goes for a pedigree, and it's blocked. These guys, they're putting in a great effort. This is a really great match. They're trading sleeper attempts. We get one double down. We get another pedigree that is blocked and countered with a slingshot, tried and true Triple H spot, and that turns into a double down. This is, like I said, really awesome stuff here. But then, wouldn't you know it, Legacy has to go and ruin it, with Rhodes and DiBiase storming the ring, attacking both men, and the match is thrown out. And Orton's like, I guess I don't have anyone to defend my title against at Night of Champions. Like, yeah, you're the smartest dude alive, man. You really thought that through. No one's ever done this before. You really got it pegged. And then suddenly, guest DiBiase interrupts, and he says, au contraire, mon frere, you are actually going to be wrestling both men at Night of Champions. Ooh, bet you didn't think of that one. It's annoying that we couldn't get a decisive winner, that, we had the schmoz ending, but they used it to justify the triple threat, fine, but it's such a tired trope. Even in 2009, that is a tired-ass trope of the heel champion thinking that by beating up both guys in the qualifying match that he has gotten rid of both of those men. It never works out that way. Just once I'd like to see someone do that, where like, oh, both the guys fighting for number one contendership get beat up, and that's it. They don't fight him for the belt, and like, well, find somebody else. I want to see someone try that. And now it's time for my ratings. I give this episode of Raw a 3 out of 5. I think the action was much better this week than the previous episode, but I mean, some of my biggest pet peeves did take place on this show. Champions losing for no reason, and the triple threat trope, basically. So that was kind of my big knock on it. As far as the host goes, this week I'm going to give Ted DiBiase Sr. a 3.5 out of 5. I think he was a better role for this guest host thing. Obviously, with Batista, it's more kind of a shock casting because he's hurt and that the position is there. It makes sense. With DiBiase, they're going more of that traditional, like, elder statesman kind of authority route. And since it is only one night, they got to make it count. And I do like that they were able to have DiBiase show two very different motivations in one night for Ted Jr. and for Cody. It was a great callback to his character's history, and I think, yeah, he carried himself more as an authority figure than Batista, but probably because he has just more of that experience. My pick for the best match of the night goes to Cena and Triple H, despite the BS finish. I mean, really, I'd say Orton and DiBiase was really up there too. That was a close second for me on this one. The worst match or moment I would give for this week, like I already mentioned, when you've got the champions losing on TV, like a lot of them did during this time, it really makes the champions look like chumps. It makes them look like everybody else. I think that at least now in our current era, I think most champions across the board are presented with a bit more gravitas than that. I would like to think so. And now we go to the moment you've all been waiting for, the updated rankings for the guest hosts. Who's the best so far in history? Right now you see Ted DiBiase overtaking the Animal Batista, but then again, it is very early in the season, and quite literally, anything could happen. But what did you think of this episode of Raw, and how about this review? Let me know in the comment section below. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, hit that bell icon for all the notifications. Next time here on the segment, we are finally branching out of wrestlers in the guest host role, and we're finally going to reach out to that elusive, that Hollywood luster. Ooh, please give us some of that Hollywood exposure. Ooh, we love it so much here in WWE. Let's get Seth Green. Yeah, the guy from Family Guy and Robot Chicken. He's hosting next time on Raw. But until then, I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.